Wow, way better role. Way better.
Like, love it. I'm like, ready?
Okay. This is Haley. And this is Bailey. And you're listening to Text Me When You Land. Episode 2 of just staring at each other. This is what happens when we record. We're trying to get ahead. We're trying to get ahead because we're both going to be traveling for a little bit. So we're sitting here recording a few. And I feel like when we do that, after the first one, we just, tend to stare at each other at the beginning because we're like, huh? We need to keep
Bailey,
going.
how's it going? We're so funny. I saw this funny quote that was like, out of all the billions of people in the world, it's funny that me and my best friend are the funniest.
That's a good one.
Oh, it's funny.
Stares at me.
What's new with you, Bailey?
I am, well, when we record this, I'm going to be, we not record this, when we post this, Haley's face. See, this is what happens when we record back to back. This is just our brains stop working. Oh my gosh. I am getting ready for travel for the next month and a half, which I'm super excited about. And I feel like this week is a prep week to leave, which is why we're sitting here recording all that. So I guess that's new news because I'm going to be leaving soon.
Gotta get her done. Totally.
See, this is why gotta get her done. Like this is What's your new news?
My new news, I got a new vlogging camera. It's so exciting over here. But it's like I was like, finally I just pulled the trigger and I did it. I was like, oh my word. I need a new camera, so I'm really excited to try it out.
It's so exciting. It's so fun. It's so fun using new stuff for filming.
Heavy. I was like,
which one did you get?
Be the same one that I had before.
Oh,
it's the newer version, but it's like I'm holding the stick thing.
Oh yeah, that it does make it super heavy. I have the same setup and it makes it super heavy.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, my arm's gonna be like
I like it more for like setting up and filming too. Like when you're doing things, like I feel like when I don't like walk around in public with like the whole
I'm gonna I got this like mic thing that goes on top of it.
Yeah, I have a mic on mine.
Yeah, and it came with this fluffy cover.
Yeah, I have that.
Like, wow, this is like attention, everyone look here. I'm like, wow, this is gonna take some confidence. And Bryce is like, you should bring this to Colorado and film your sister's graduation. I'm like, there's like so many people there. Like, you really just have to embrace it at that point. So I'm like, we'll see how that goes.
I feel like when I do that out and about, I just take everything off and I just use the small one. But that's just me because I'm like, I like to be low key when I'm out and about. That's just like my personality. So like I'm like, we'll use that in different situations, like at hotels or things like when it's not as big a crowd. And then when I'm out, or I use my phone to like mix it up.
Tested the audio with and without it, and it's like a distinct difference. So it's like, wow. I'm like, I'm like, well, we'll see. I just gotta embrace it. I'm never gonna see these people again.
Well, you can take the bottom off too, which makes it not as big, I think. Like you have the fluffy thing on top, but you're just holding the camera versus having like the whole setup.
Oh, like the stick.
That's what I do. Yeah, that's what I do.
Got it.
Because but also like because it depends what I'm doing, that's easier to throw in a bag, like a little purse, than having the whole long.
Oh yeah, having to like unscrew it and then like
yeah.
Okay.
I'm so excited about today's topic because I have so many thoughts on this topic, and I feel like this is something you and I are
you have
always
thoughts on
talking
everything.
About. I know. I just have my opinions over here.
I was gonna say, I'm like, if you ever need an opinion, ask Bailey. She's got you.
I'm not afraid to tell you. I always say, like, you have different friends for different things, and some friends will just agree with you to make you feel better. And I am just not that friend. I'm going to tell you what I actually think.
Just bluntly putting it out there. If you don't want an opinion, do not be friends with Bailey.
I mean, like, I'm not going to be mean and not tell a random person, but like a good friend, if you're actually coming to me for advice, I'm not going to just like be like, oh my gosh, that was the best.
You're not just going to boost their ego or make them feel better. Yeah, you're going to tell it to them like how it is.
But I think you go to different friends for different things. So I always say like, you can tell when somebody wants like, oh, I just want to be reassured. And, you can like, some of my friends will just be like, I just want to be reassured. Like, just, I'm like, okay, well then I won't give you my opinion right now, even though I probably.
That always makes me nervous. When people are like my mom will be like, can I have some advice? And then or your opinion. I'm like, "Do you want my honest opinion, or are you looking for agreement? Like me to agree
Yeah,
with you?"
which I think
And
that's, like, fair to ask, and I feel
yeah.
like
And she's like, I need reassurance." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like,
yeah.
"Okay, well," I'm like, I don't really know if I love that, but if you like it, then go for it." I don't know, this anyway, today's topic. It is Bachelorette season, Bachelor, Bachelorette, and we're not talking about the TV show. We're talking about the parties, the relationships, the good times, like all of it. We've seen a lot of interesting things going down between all these parties, and not just like Stagecoach, Coachella. It's like party season. It's like the season
Yeah,
of
for
parties.
sure. There's
I
so many
definitely
parties
have
going
not
on,
attended any of those.
but I feel like the main thing in this topic is talking about being confident in relationships, and I think that can put
Especially in
that
those
to a
types of
test.
environments. Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
but
And,
I
like,
feel like
as
we
an
can talk about it in different
outsider
areas.
yeah, as an outsider, and I say an outsider because I have not gone to, like, an actual bachelorette, bachelor party. I mean, it'd be weird if I had gone to a bachelor
I
party,
feel
which
like you
I
have an
mean
accent when you say them. Okay, keep going.
wait, what?
I feel like you have an accent when you say bachelor
Bachelor?
and yeah, you go
Ba
bachelor party. I don't even know what I'm okay. Keep
I'll have to
going.
listen to it and see. I'm like, "What are you
Mine
talking
was way more
about?"
dramatic than how you say it, but you're gonna hear it. Maybe. Maybe it's just like what I'm
I
hearing.
I
Because one
do get
time I thought I heard
accents when I get
something.
really excited about something, so
She's like, "I'm so excited at this topic."
I've never been, but I'm really excited to talk about it. But okay, so we were talking about different like situations that might cause relationships to have to be tested more about the security of it. And when we say security, we're not mean like safety. We're talking about like confidence in each other. And I think a lot of the times going to things like Coachella or a bachelor bachelorette party can really put a relationship on the line because a lot of insecurities can come out because that's when the wild things, I use air quotes, can happen, and you have to really be able to have trust in your significant other when those things go down. Now, as someone who's never been to that, Bailey, do you want to speak up on what your
Yeah.
thoughts are?
Yeah, I definitely think those situations bring out insecurities because I think it's just a lot of times like at bachelorettes parties, you're going out and it's like groups of girls and groups of guys out and it's just like how it is. But I think when you are in a secure relationship, you can go to those things without it being this huge deal that you feel like your person's going to do something. Because at the end of the day, in a secure relationship, you know that, like for me, I can go to a bachelorette party and it's not a threat. Like, I don't know if that's the right
It's
word,
not
but
a
it's
threat to your
not
relationship.
yeah, it's not a threat to our relationship because I'm not gonna go do anything. Like, I usually am at it, I'm, like, texting Evan, like, I'm keeping him updated, like, not but, like, at the end of the day, we, like, chat and we, like, we talk about it, and it's, like, I'm not hiding anything, and I think those a lot of times, like
You're on the same page.
yeah, I think I've seen a lot of times that people get insecure and then it makes the person at the bachelorette party not be able to enjoy because their person at home is giving them a hard time and asking questions and making them feel guilty for being there. And really at the end of the day, you're not there to go hang out with guys. You're there to be there for your friend and show up 150%. And if you know me, I'm a person that's like when you go to a bachelorette party, you need to be able to show up 150% because it's that 3 days. 3 days it's for that person to go out and enjoy and be with all their good friends. And it's not about going hanging out with guys. Yeah, maybe guys are out at the bars and doing that stuff, but really you're with Haley's taking notes. Haley,
Writing all this down.
but really, but really you're there to be with your girlfriends and hang out and have a girls' weekend without it being,
Mhm.
it's really not, yeah, there are those fun things and you go out and all that, but it's being able to show up. And I think you're not able to show up when somebody back home is making you feel guilty for being there. And I think I've seen that a lot. And I'm not saying like I had to work through a lot of things when Evan and I started dating. And it wasn't like we actually weren't in bachelorette season yet because we were 21. So people weren't really getting married, but he was traveling and he would, like he'd be around a bunch of different girls and stuff like that. And I remember I had to grow to be able to not feel insecure because I had come from a bad relationship, but he showed me there was nothing to be insecure about. And very quickly we got over that and we were able to push each other to be better versions of ourselves. Where if I think very early on we wouldn't have made each other secure, it could end up like I see those other relationships where it's like people can't show up for their friends because they're so busy trying to make the person at home realize they're not going to do anything. Like you're not going to do anything. Like that's the thing I think is so it's hard. I mean, like I'm trying to explain them the right way. I feel like there's so many thoughts there that I'm like I want to make sure I'm like saying that
No,
right, but
that
it's like
yeah.
it's complicated for sure.
So, question. So let's just paint a story. let's say someone has been in a relationship and they're dating, and a bachelorette, we'll just say a bachelorette for example, comes up, and like in that relationship in the past, they've had trust issues, but they are working on rebuilding that together. How does someone find the ability to trust that partner and be secure in their relationship or confident in the relationship during those types of situations when they've had a history of maybe not being as confident in them because of things that have happened? I don't does
For
that make sense?
no, for sure, that makes sense. That's something I feel like I've dealt with and I've also seen other people deal with, and I think a lot of times trust comes from a lot of different things, not just that one situation. So you're gonna be able to trust the person to go just built off trust you have in that relationship from before. But that can be a trigger going to an event like that. And I think one, having a conversation before they go, hey, this is what I'm comfortable with. Hey, this was what I'm not like, hey, don't go out. Like, no, we're not
Yeah.
gonna, like they need to be able to go and show up for the person. But hey,
Yeah.
like, if I haven't heard from you, and this can just be the first time, like, hey, if I haven't heard from you at this amount of time, I think I'm going to feel a little insecure just because from past things. Would you mind just like sending me a quick text? And it doesn't have to be
Yeah,
like
having
controlling
boundaries or,
or
like,
anything like
check-ins.
that. Yeah, it's not it's like I feel like when I'm out, I personally like love to text Evan and be like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing." Or like send a photo like with my friends or whatever. I don't think it means you're controlled or anything like that. And I feel like that word is so thrown around in relationships and I don't like that. I think being able to be have the conversation before we can be like, "Hey, I might be a little insecure. This is what I think is going to help me. And I think from this, then we're going to build on that. And then the next time, I probably won't feel that way, but I need to build the trust first because I've had the trust broken in the past."
Yeah, and like you said, you don't like using the word control, and, like, that's a lot that word is thrown around in relationships a lot. I also see the word "let." Like, "Oh, my boyfriend's letting me do this," or, "I'm letting him go," or, "I'm letting," and it's like that still has a lot of weird, I don't know, vibes behind it. It shows that
Yeah,
there's
for sure.
not like, no, it's like,
I feel
why are
like
they
being able
letting
to
you?
boost your person up. Like
Yeah.
at the last bachelorette I went to, Evan had gotten me a bunch of outfits for my birthday, and I was wearing them, and like the whole time people were like, "Where'd you get that outfit? Where'd you get that outfit?" And I was like, "Oh, like Evan got it for me." And they're like, "Wait, I love it." And it was like, like one of the dress was like pink. It's on my Instagram, pink, and like had a cutout here, and was like I had like a little see through, but I had like a bralette and something under it. And they're like, "Oh my," like he was he's not like, "Oh, you have to wear this like long dress and you get to pick what you wear," but he's confident to know that I can wear that dress and it
Yeah.
not be a big deal and also make me feel confident in what I'm wearing. Does that make sense? Where I
That
feel like
is
boost your
amazing.
person up, boost that, like
Yeah,
make
make
them
them
feel good
feel
about
good.
going out. That's something that Evan did so well because I came from an insecure relationship. He'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like no, go, like have such a good time." And I think I was more hesitant because I felt like I don't know, but it just was like a past thing
Yeah,
I
that
had to get
black
through.
mesh thing, can I borrow that for yours?
Yes. I love that. I mean, that took confidence in me because I was like, what is this group gonna be wearing? Because
Yeah,
I was in like a little bodysuit and then like a
it was
sheer
so cute. I'm
see-through
like, "Can I
dress.
borrow that when I go to yours?" Because
It
I'm
was
like
so fun. I'm also like, oh my gosh, you're at a bachelorette, like go all out. Have fun. Like if you want. Like I
yeah.
personally love to do those things. Like when else am I gonna wear that? Like really, I'm not gonna be walking around town in that. Like, you know.
Why not?
like, I mean,
No, it's so true, and I love that you talk about, like, boosting each other up. There was something I was gonna comment on that you were talking about from previous relationships. Oh, it reminds me. So, I think in the beginning of my I wouldn't say my relationship, I mean, definitely was, with Bryce, but in the beginning of our marriage, because we got married really young. Got married when I was 20 years old. Yeah, I know. But I was brought up from other really insecure relationships, and we had been together for 2 years before, but I never really worked on myself in that way to go through those insecurities and, like, process what that looks like. So, like, for example, when we be watching a movie and, like, a hot girl would come on or, like, a nude scene or something like that, I'd be like, "Look away. Stop. Don't look." Like, I would just, and so he would be like, he'd get all uncomfortable, and then I don't know what happened. I think I was just like, I realized that
times have changed, that's for sure. Okay, keep
I
going.
know, I know, right? And now I'm like, whenever, like, those scenes come on now, I'm not like, "Hi, look away," and I'm not like, "Oh, yeah, go and lust after her," go like, "Yeah, like, she's so sexy," but I'm like, "Look how hot she is." I'm like, "I like her. She looks so beautiful," and Bryce is like, "Yeah," and I'm like, and we it's just like, because I have found it within me that I trust him. He's not gonna go and cheat on me, and I'm not, like, worried he's, like, thinking, "Oh, she's way better looking than me." I mean, I'll be blunt here. I know I'm not the most beautiful looking person on the planet. There are plenty of other beautiful women on this earth, and I'm like, let's just bask in their beautifulness together. Like, you know, it's like I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but I worked through those emotions. I did the soul searching, and it took probably a few years for me to get to that point. And it just like it helped our marriage in so many ways. And now, whenever I see a beautiful woman, I'll be like, check her out. Look how cute, like, look how
Yeah,
good she looks.
having the confidence.
And he's like, yeah, I know, right? I was like, oh, you saw that. He's like, yeah, I saw that. And I was like, okay.
But
It's just
yeah,
like
but being
funny.
able to work through that, and I think that's something I was actually about to say this right before you said that, and like it literally ties in so perfectly. But so many people make comments, either they make comments or they make jabs, and it's obvious to me now because Evan and I have been together a while, and people will be like, we know Bailey and Evan are great. They have such an amazing relationship. Oh, they're perfect. Like blah blah. And I'm like, okay, one, we work very hard at our relationship to build it to be where it's at. And two, we're not perfect. And I'm not gonna like we have an amazing relationship and I'm honestly so, so, so grateful. But we work through things too. And I feel like that's so looked at as like oh, they have such an amazing relationship. Like, yeah, we do because we work really hard, but we still have stuff. And I think that's overlooked a lot of times just because it, like, yeah, you and Bryce have a great relationship, but you still have stuff. Every relationship has stuff and they deal with stuff and being able to work on it. Like you said, like we worked through it to be able to get to that point where I could say that it wasn't just like that. And I think that's what I mean, even with like going to bachelorettes, going to those things, like talk about it. Like I wasn't just like that when we got into our relationship because I'd come from a negative experience in the past. But that's not our relationship. But you still have triggers, so you need to work through it. And I think that's what's like I also think things are started very, very early on. And you have to make those changes early. If you don't, it's gonna be harder. It's not impossible, but it is going to be harder.
So, okay, can I ask I want to ask a question. What are your thoughts on like the opposite sex being friends with the opposite sex in a marriage or relationship or even attending like a bachelorette? Like what are your thoughts in general on that? Cuz I see a lot of mixed opinions on that.
My best friend's a guy, so I feel like that, you
Ouch.
know, sorry. But who I was raised with is a guy. But I feel like I mean, if you know the person and you don't make it a weird thing and you're not doing things that are over the line, then I think it's totally okay. But I think if you're pushing the limits and you're making it a weird situation, then yeah, there should be a conversation. But,
Mhm.
I don't think,
So like
I think if you could
it was someone you were friends with from when you were little, correct?
yeah, somebody I was friends yeah, I was raised with him, yeah.
I know who you're talking about. um but yeah, so the thing I saw this reel that said 3 things I did for a healthy marriage. And it was one of them was I got rid of all opposite sex friends.
No,
Huh.
I don't agree.
Like,
That just
are you
makes it
serious? I'm
that
like,
makes
I
insecurities in every like, what, we're gonna go out and you're gonna have a server that's the opposite sex and you're gonna be angry that like, I just think that opens the door for those
yeah,
more
I was like,
insecurities.
oh, well, and also opens, I think, secrecy because like
Yeah.
you have coworkers and you have, I
Mhm.
don't know, like your kids have friends and their parents. Like, what if their parents are divorced? And I don't know. There's just so many circumstances where I don't feel like that's a solely a good thing to base things off of unless there's something to hide or something to be ashamed of, or like there is something like maybe for a little bit that's something you have to work through, then I understand that. But I don't feel like it's necessary. In order to have a healthy relationship, you have to get rid of opposite gender
No, I feel like getting to know the people too.
relationships.
Like Evan and I know all our friends of each other very well. So like I feel like if I didn't know someone, maybe I'd be like, oh, like I'd love to get to know them. And not in a weird way, just like like once I feel like you get to know like the opposite sex friend, you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. And honestly, at the end of the day, like I feel like you shouldn't have to worry once you get to know them. And if there are red flags, then fine. Like have the conversation, being like, hey, I think she likes you. And him being like, okay, yeah, maybe she does, but I'm like, there's no interest, like that's not a thing. And like even bringing it up to the girl, like I would have no, like no shame in having that conversation if they're really that good of friends.
Yeah, no, and that makes total sense. I was thinking about how, like, for Bryce and I. there was an ex that kept reaching out to me when we were dating, and it was like, okay, like, I had to just kind of this sounds horrible, I had to ghost him because he just wasn't
Well,
getting
no,
the
but I mean,
point,
that makes sense. Well, but, like,
and
okay,
that's, like,
think
one of
about,
those
like
circumstances I think too where that's where I think would be fine,
yeah,
but,
there's
like,
for sure lines. But,
that's because
like,
I
what about,
knew
like,
the
us being
person.
friends? Like, me, you, and Bryce have hung out without Evan a lot, not because he's not invited, but because he was traveling or he wasn't
Nope,
home or
he's
if he
not
was
invited.
working. He's not invited. But,
No.
like, in that situation, he could have been, like or, like, me and Bryce, like, you would go do something and, like, I'd be hanging out with Bryce. Like, there's not, like, a weird it's not
Yeah,
weird, but that could
no.
be considered a weird thing if you're like, "Oh, you can't have any opposite sex friends." You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was funny, we're watching Real Housewives of Beverly Hills right now, and there's a girl who's divorced, and they're talking with one of the couples who's married, and the girl that's divorced looked at the woman and was like, "Yeah, I'd have sex with your husband." And she's like, "Thanks." And she just it just caught her off guard, and I'm like, "Okay, that's weird."
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
there's
that's weird.
lines. There's
Yeah, like
lines for
but
sure.
she was just, like, teasing, and I'm like, "Okay." Like, it really just comes down at the end of the day, the dynamics between that person, like, between you, your significant other, and the person that you're, like, may or may not wanna be friends with. But I think it also comes down to your relationship, and if your relationship can't handle opposite sex friends and you're in that position, then maybe that's the best route for you. But in my opinion, I can't bluntly say yes, no, get rid of all of them because I just don't feel like it's a one size fits all.
I also think you know what I think a really, really big thing in this is being on the same page as your partner. Is it
Yes.
like sitting in a conversation and not making it like making it like one second, let me trying to say this right. Being in a situation and being able to show you're on the same page without it coming out where you guys seem like you're on different pages and one's okay with other sex and one's not okay with that and like it that looks weird. You're like, "Okay, well, what's going on there?" And then I feel like that it can open the door in a weird way. But I feel like if you're on the same page, you know what you're comfortable with. If yeah, maybe not going to having a sleepover with the other sex, like that's fair. Like whatever your boundaries are, like having that laid out and like that works for you, but you being on the same page as your partner. And
Exactly,
that's
and
really
that's the
what it
thing at
comes
the end of
down
the day.
to.
What works for one couple might not work for another, so that's why it's like there's so much room for judgment, I think, because like
Yeah,
we've
I
had
guess I feel like I
conversations.
jumped to being like I guess I jumped to being like, oh, no, like, I don't think that's good, but I guess it's only fair to have the conversation and know what's best for you as a couple, and I think everything's gonna look
Yeah.
different to each couple.
Well, and it's interesting because, like, as we started to get to know each other in the beginning, we found that we were all very open and comfortable talking about things that most people aren't comfortable talking about. And it's not from like all situations, from family to personal life to, current relationship situations, just all of that. And it's just that's what we found works for us. But we've found that it's really hard to find that kind of dynamic with other couples because there's so much insecurity in those relationships
Yeah,
and
that's
people
true.
don't
That
take the
was something
time
huge.
yeah, people don't take the time to actually get secure in a relationship. They just move on to the next thing, where if
Mm,
that's getting engaged, getting
that
married, having a
yeah,
baby, and they don't actually take
and
time to be like, "Am I confident in this?" Even though you're married or dating, you can still be confident, but at a core, like there's so much things you have to work on.
I feel like so many people think, "Oh, when I get engaged, I'll be more confident. Oh, when I get married, that'll make me confident. Like he's really mine." It's like, "No, that's not how it works." But you hear those comments. Like those comments are said for sure. "Oh, we have a baby." Like that makes no. It all starts from your relationship and and like I feel like that is in so many ways like people think that next thing or that big thing is going to change it. Like, no, it comes from the beginning. It comes from dating. Like, that's what's so important to dating. And I know some people can get married super quick in like 6 months and different things, and every relationship is different and works for different people in different ways. But I think getting to really know each other and take the time to be confident does make a difference. Like, that is something in our friendship we've had such a unique opportunity is like we are all very confident and comfortable and like to talk to each other and like have found like we didn't find that in a lot of other friendships because we found that the other couple maybe just wasn't as confident and didn't like having those conversations or weren't as open and that's okay. But we were like, wait, this is so unique. We haven't found this. We haven't been able to talk openly with another couple because a lot of couples aren't confident and it comes out in those conversations. And that's what I mean by being on the same page around people. It's very obvious very quickly when you're not on the same page. And that's something I have a conversation with Evan all the time about. Like, hey, if we're going to go into this conversation right now, I just want to make sure we're on the same page before we go into it and then try and figure it out when we're in that conversation because then it makes it look like, whoa, what's
Well,
happening?
when
And
you're
you're
in the
not
heat of the
always going to
moment
have it.
too, it's hard
Yeah.
to think logically, and it's best that you understand before what your guys'
Yeah.
limits are and what you're comfortable with. And that's the thing is sometimes you don't even know that until the situation arises and then you have something to discuss. Like Bryce, like this is a perfect example. I've talked about this before. I thought that when Bryce and I were engaged, I didn't want kids in the beginning. And I was like, 10 years, that's when I want kids. And he's like, 5 years. And I was like, oh, he'll change his mind once we're married. And he'll realize he can push it off. And then as time went on, I kept like I stuck to that, but he thought I was gonna change and I didn't. And that kept really having a hard time in our marriage. And obviously I've done enough soul searching that that's not the same anymore. That's not the same case. But people think that just because the next phase happens in a relationship, things change.
You're gonna change them. You think you're gonna change them, you're not gonna change them. And you
Nope.
sat down and you said, "Hey, this is how I feel," and you guys were clear with each other, but it still can leave, like that's Evan and I started dating when we were 21, and we had the conversation very early on, like, hey, this is what we're gonna focus on for the next X amount of time before we, like take a next big step because that's what our life looked like. And we had that conversation and we were super
Yeah.
clear. But not everybody has a thing. And you think you're gonna change them a lot of times. But no, like if you have that conversation, it's like like you said, like you thought he was gonna be like, oh, 5 years, like, okay, but it probably came to that point and then you had to really dive into that. And that's good that you guys had those conversations. And I'm sure those hard conversations got you to where you are now.
Yeah, it all plays into it. And my dad always said when you're going into a marriage, like when you're engaged or dating, you go into it with your eyes wide open. But when you're married, you go into it with your eyes half closed because sometimes those little things don't meet it's not worth it at that point. And it's not saying that you want to disregard your feelings, but like it's kind of like a is that worth getting upset over kind of a thing or am I just being silly kind of a thing? But I remember thinking that, and I see so many people who are really, going quick on the life. Like they are married and then they have baby, and I'm like, and they dated for very little. And I'm not one to judge their relationship. I'm not, and this is just from what I've seen. But they also end up coming out, and I see reels that say, having a baby is the hardest time in a marriage, and I'm like, or getting engaged is supposed to be the happiest time in a marriage or in a relationship, and I see people who are miserable during engagements. And I see people who have a great time when they have a baby. I'm not saying that there aren't hard moments, but the fact that it comes down to what we've been saying is that if you're on the same page and you have these honest but hard conversations, and we talked about it in a previous episode, I think 2 or 3 episodes ago in season 4, we talked about how sometimes having those hard conversations, but knowing it won't necessarily end in like I don't know, pieces. Like, it doesn't mean that you're gonna break up, but it just means that you are being honest with each other rather than brushing it off. And I think a lot of people just don't have those hard conversations because 'cause they're scared or they don't
And they
have the
want
emotional maturity to do it.
they're for sure scared. And I think being in a comfortable relationship sometimes seems easier than working on your relationship. But in the big picture, working on a relationship, going through those hard conversations, pushing each other to go to those bachelorette parties and being confident during it, even though it's hard, I'm sure, like it's different for everyone. But even though it can be hard, you're growing so much from those situations and you're making your relationship stronger in the big picture. So take the time to work on your relationship, have those hard conversations, say what you're comfortable with. And also know you can grow together and you can change, but don't expect to change somebody if you're not going to sit back. One, you're not going to change somebody. You can grow together and people are going to change. But I feel like really taking the time to work together, have those conversations and being on the same page is at the end of the day the most important thing and can make these situations so much more fun. And those big moments, you're able to enjoy so much more.
It's true. And, like, there's things from past relationships that you'll see that you're like, "Wow, was I even the same person then? I'm definitely
Oh,
not the same person then."
I
And,
was
like,
not the same
you'll
person before.
still change and grow if you let yourself and actually take the time to do that soul searching, you will find that when you start to grow, chances are your significant other will grow with you, at least. But what's hard is that if they're not willing to put in the work, to work on themselves, but you are, then that's what can create a rift in a relationship. And like, for example, there's been multiple times in my marriage where Bryce and I were, I'm like, I was going to therapy and I was doing all this like journaling and soul searching, and I was really going through the works of myself because I had things I knew I could not just expect him to start changing and doing because of my own insecurities and expectations. But then he wasn't doing a lot of the reflecting himself, so I started kind of taking it on, and I realized no. And so I started talking to him about it, and I was like, you need to start doing the work too. You need to start realizing that this isn't just on me. And he then had to step up to the plate too, but he was also in that place where that emotional maturity was there, and he was willing to do the work for the relationship for both of us, and it put us in such a better spot. But if one of you is not willing to do that work or compromise and work together on it, then you're gonna have a harder time.
For sure. You definitely have to be able to have, and like you said, you guys were on, like you were working on yourself, he wasn't, but you had the hard conversation and then he was able to step into it. It's not always going to just like happen, but have
Yeah,
those
no.
conversations and see if your
This is over
person is
years.
willing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not just gonna happen overnight. It's gonna be something like, "Hey, I think this will really help us." And maybe it comes up again like, "Hey, do you think we could try this? Like we've talked about it, but we haven't put it into action, you know?" And I think just taking that time to really build a strong relationship, some people don't do. And I see it like with my parents' friends and like just like different age groups, you see it come out like you see these people getting married at this age and then how it affects them later by looking at different groups of people, and it's crazy. Like take the time, work on your relationship, have those hard conversations, and really take the time to grow.
And the earlier you do it, I'm not saying the
The
easier it
easy
gets,
it is
but
it's not easier in the moment, but it is easier.
it gets easier to bring it up and
D-
to have those
and
hard
deal with
moments without the worry and the fear of everything going into a
and all the
billion
resentment.
pieces. Yes, that's what I was trying to say. That's probably a better way.
Yeah.
It's not the sooner you do it, the less likely you'll have resentment later. That's the best way of putting it.
What are your thoughts on bachelor and bachelorette parties? I obviously know this is just like my experience. I've only been to a few. I feel like I've learned a lot from them and I only like touched on the surface of them. But every relationship is different and there is no judgment if there are reasons that you're not comfortable with it or you are comfortable with it. But I'd love to have those conversations. And I feel like having those conversations really open your eyes in different ways and make you think like that's what we love about sitting down and having these conversations. So if you have any thoughts or comments, leave them on this podcast.